25 things King Charles can do and you can't. Hello and welcome back to our channel. Hope everything is going well. In today's video, we will be discussing King Charles and his authority, which differs from the common men. Following the passing of Queen Elizabeth on September 8, 2022, His Majesty King Charles III assumed the throne. By doing this, he became the 41st British king since William the Conqueror conquered the country in 1066. The British monarch then had almost complete control over all issues affecting the kingdom and its subjects. Let's jump into 25 things King Charles can do without further ado. Number 25. King of 14 Commonwealth nations. As the current King of England, King Charles III also serves as a ceremonial head of the Commonwealth realms, a group of 14 independent sovereign states that recognize him as their monarch. As the Commonwealth's head, King Charles III performs a number of ceremonial and representational duties in each of these countries, but he has no political power or direct control over their governments. Each of these countries instead has its own government and political system, with the monarch serving as a symbol of national unity and continuity. Number 24. Decide whether he wants to be a king. King Charles III, like all monarchs in some cases, has the option of resigning or declining the role of king. The monarch's position is inherited, and unless there are specific provisions of abdication, the monarch serves for life. In some countries, the monarch may be forced to abdicate if they are deemed unfit to rule, renounce their claim to the throne, or are succeeded by a closer heir. However, in the absence of such provisions, a monarch cannot simply resign from the position. The monarchy is an important part of a country's constitutional framework. Any changes to the line of succession or the monarch's role would necessitate a significant political process and may necessitate amendments to the country's constitution. Still, if he wants, he can follow his great-uncle's step of abdicating. After all, the king decides. Number 23. Pick the Prime Minister. The process for selecting a Prime Minister in the United Kingdom is determined by the Constitutional Convention rather than a formal legal process. The monarch, in this case, King Charles, does have the authority to appoint a Prime Minister directly. He would have to go through a manual of cabinet rules. Picking the Prime Minister is not a good choice in order to stay politically neutral, but if he wants, he can take the country's matters in hand. If circumstances like sudden death or unrest arrive, we might see King Charles picking the Prime Minister. Number 22. Pick Supreme Court justices. The Prime Minister is responsible for appointing Supreme Court justices in consultation with the Lord Chancellor, a senior government member. The monarch, in this case, King Charles III, cannot appoint Supreme Court justices directly, but can have his say in deciding the country's lawmakers. The process of appointing Supreme Court justices begins with Lord Chancellor and Prime Minister selecting suitable candidates, who then make recommendations to the monarch for the appointment. The selected candidate is then formally appointed to the position of Supreme Court Justice by the monarch. Number 21. Can decide members of the House of Lords. The House of Lords is one of the three branches of the UK's parliamentary system. It is comprised of members who are either appointed or hold honorary titles. The purpose of these roles is to review and approve laws passed by the House of Commons on constitutional issues. Without King Charles's approval, the Prime Minister cannot appoint the members. As the members are required to know the country's culture, business, and law, the king has a right to have his say. Public and health services, along with other lawmaking matters, reflect the status and involvement of the monarch in the country's welfare. Number 20. Can make, change, and abolish laws. Laws are an important part of the country's well-being, and it is clear that the British monarchy recognizes the crucial part of governing the country. This is why the king has the authority to amend and abolish the laws established by Parliament, and make laws without Parliament's approval. If you go back to the royals' history, you will encounter some bizarre laws made by previous monarchs. One such example is King Charles II, who declared in 1679 that no one could make or sell pizzas in London without the permission of the king. If King Charles wants, he can make such lame laws. It will even allow him to remain politically neutral. Number 19. Can allow the monarchy to make political decisions. Although the monarchy has no intentions of getting into politics or interfering in political decisions, King Charles has the power to make political decisions. This is known as the royal prerogative, which includes making appointments, approving treaties, and appointing members. As the head of state, the king has the right to summon the prime minister to get updates on what is happening in the country. Furthermore, he has the authority to appoint members of the Privy Council who deal with British overseas territory legislation. Currently, the monarchy is not involved in the country's politics. Number 18. Can pardon convicts. King Charles holds the power to pardon convicts and lawbreakers. Though this law is exercised rarely in the current setup of the monarchy, if the monarch wants, he can pardon the criminal with the help of the Royal Mercy Law. The law was originally intended to prevent the execution of convicts, but since the death penalty law is no longer in effect, the Royal Mercies Law has remained a part of the Royal Laws book only. If you're looking for recent examples, Queen Elizabeth in 2013 pardoned a codebreaker from the World War II era. Well, if King Charles wants, he can follow his mother's example. Number 17. Drive without having a driver's license. The monarch, when traveling, is typically accompanied by a troop of royal staff and guards, including a chauffeur. But if King Charles, in the middle of the trip, wishes to get behind the wheel and drive his car, he would not require a driver's license. This is all thanks to his royal status, which grants him the privilege of being the only person in the country to drive a vehicle without a license. Though driving without a driver's license is not condoned by the king. As a matter of fact, the licenses issued to citizens of the UK all have the king's name on the issuance. Number 16. Cross the speed limit and break traffic laws. While on the topic of driving, King Charles is even exempt from following traffic laws. On the road, he has the potential to violate several laws. The speed limit set in the country for all citizens does not include the king. King Charles can go fast and furious on the road if he wants. This exemption is because the king's official car falls under the category of vehicles used by police, medics, and firefighters. This means that if King Charles is late to official commitments and in a hurry to mark his presence, he has the right to ignore the speed limit. Furthermore, he can even travel in a car without a registration plate. Number 15. Does not require a passport to travel. King Charles does not require a passport or visa to travel around the globe. You may ask, why? He is the king after all. Since the British passport is issued by the king himself, he does not need to have a passport of his own. This right is only granted to the ruling monarch. He does own a passport as part of the formalities and records of his official travels. This means the power of being a king is greater than the power of a passport. Number 14. Commander of Armed Forces. Being the sovereign of the nation comes with its own perks. King Charles is also considered the head of the British Armed Forces. King Charles has his own part of two of the royal forces, the Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy. Due to his royal duties and decorum, he does not command the army but is given a ceremonial title. He does not have direct control over operations and troops. However, King Charles does hold the power to appoint and dismiss military personnel in both the Royal Air Force and Royal Navy.
Can award titles and honors.
King Charles can grant official honors and titles to whomever he pleases. The titles typically include knighthoods and damehoods. These titles are part of their military traditions to honor the military men for their sacrifice and bravery. Usually, the titles are nominated by government officials, but they require the approval of the king. He can even award these honors in person. Typically, such acts are appreciated as they recognize individuals working for betterment in the sectors of science, the arts, charity, and public service. Number 12. Can appoint bishops for the church. King Charles can appoint bishops and archbishops for the Church of England, as it comes under royal rule. The appointment of bishops is typically made by the monarch or the prime minister. The formality of calling the bishop for the services of the Church of England is done by the king himself. An official letter known as a letter patent is issued. His title of Defender of the Faith makes him applicable to the task. The king's power to appoint the Church of England bishops is symbolic and ceremonial and done to maintain harmony. Number 11. Own wild animals of England. One of the unusual things King Charles can do is to own all the animals existing in the country. Having ownership over wild animals such as swans and dolphins is part of the royal prerogative. This symbolic right is part of one of the unusual laws of the monarchy that still exists today. He can have ownership of all open water swans and dolphins surrounding the kingdom's waters. This law is not in practice, but the king can surely own these animals if he chooses to do so. Number 10. Can decide the royal dress code. Do you ever really like a fashion trend that is not taken up by the public? Or do you wish to have your own personal style considered the dress code of a country? Well, certainly you cannot. But King Charles definitely can. King Charles has the choice of deciding the royal dress code. He can use his influence to bring in any style of dress he wants. The royal family has been through extravagant dress codes in the past. He can bring those styles of lavish gowns and heavy jewelry back as part of the dress code. The people of the country would certainly end up using it as their own style of dress, making it a global trend. Number 9. Can avoid being arrested. King Charles is the only person in the world at the moment who can be saved by the law after committing a crime. The British king is exempt from the law and cannot be arrested. He is even safe from criminal and civil proceedings. This immunity from investigations is one of the perks of being a king. This is something we cannot relate to. No, we are not promoting crimes, and everyone, including the king, should abide by the laws. King Charles has always made sure that his activities are within the legal limit. Number 8. Can have legal custody of his grandchildren. If you've gone through court dealings related to the custody of children, you know how hard it is. King Charles has the right to take over legal custody of his grandchildren, thanks to yet another of the British monarchy's unusual laws. The rule goes back to King George I of the 18th century. Since then, no monarch has amended or abolished this law. King George made this law because of the poor relationship between him and his son. One thing we're not sure about is whether the rule is applicable to Prince Harry's kids, since he is no longer part of the royal family. But we don't see King Charles even exercising this law on Prince William's kids. Number 7. Can skip paying taxes. King Charles surely enjoys all of the perks of a carefree life, enjoying your money without giving a hefty portion of it to taxes. This is something we could never imagine doing in our lives. According to sources, King Charles will not be paying taxes on the assets he inherited from the Queen after her death. His stance is supported by a 1993 law passed by the UK's then Prime Minister. The law Sovereign to Sovereign exempts 40% of the tax applicable to the assets. That is quite a lot of money to be exempted. Being overly wealthy, we think the royal family should pay extra taxes as a gesture of goodwill towards the citizens of England. King Charles can voluntarily pay the taxes, just as the Queen did. Number 6. Has his own ATM. What's better than having your own ATM machine? There are several reports of Buckingham Palace having a private ATM machine in its basement. The ATM is said to be only for royal members. The ATM is installed by the British bank, Coutts. The bank's private services are limited to the royal family. We did some research on who can own a private ATM. Turns out one has to have around 1.5 million pounds resting in the bank account. Moreover, King Charles can even go cashless, as he has cards and staff to deal with money problems. Late Queen Elizabeth used to carry cash for donation purposes only. We surely cannot relate. Do you relate to it? Number 5. Can amend royal protocols. Royal protocols are customs and traditions that the royal family must adhere to. They are a set of rules to be followed by the royals on official tours. King Charles, being a constitutional monarch, has the right to amend royal laws. If he can decide the law, he surely can amend some royal protocols. Royal protocols are not bound legally. They are present to maintain the image of the royal family and ensure the royal duties are carried out. So if King Charles finds any protocol tiring or tedious to fulfill, he can just amend them according to his liking. He may even change some archaic rules, such as the right to vote or play a simple game of Monopoly. The king can also discuss amending the protocol with royal members in an effort to modernize the monarchy. Number 4. Can keep his finances private. King Charles is the owner of assets worth millions of pounds. Nobody exactly knows how much money he has under his name. King Charles, being the ruling monarch, is entitled to keep his property and assets private. In 2005, the Freedom of Information Act was passed, giving the public access to government information. But King Charles is excluded from the list. He's not obligated to reveal any of his private information. His wealth will remain a mystery to the public as long as he is king. Number 3. Can have his portrait on the currencies of Commonwealth countries. King Charles can have his portrait printed on the currencies of all the Commonwealth countries. The decision is made in consultation with the State Bank of England. Currently, Queen Elizabeth's picture can be seen on the banknotes. It's not an easy task to change the currency, and given Charles's age, it is not a good idea to issue new currency in 14 different countries just to print his picture on the notes. Moreover, economic conditions have to be taken into account. King Charles can instead have his portrait on honorary coins, stamps, and legal documents. It's also possible that King Charles can have his picture on the notes when the country decides to introduce new currency notes. Number 2. Access to special jewelry and who to loan it to. During her reign, the late Queen Elizabeth enjoyed wearing priceless jewelry pieces. She used to flaunt them at royal weddings and state dinners. The Queen even had the authority to loan the beautiful sets to different members of the royal family. This responsibility is now passed on to King Charles. The special jewelry, worth billions of pounds, is stored in a vault inside the palace. Now it's up to King Charles to decide who to loan the jewelry to. The practice of loaning jewelry for special occasions is old. Moreover, the royals' household is present to assist King Charles in this regard. This includes safekeeping the jewelry. Number 1. Can declare war and peace. We hope the world does not see another war, but if such circumstances arose, King Charles would have the authority to declare war. Although the king's power is mostly ceremonial in many issues, and the British Parliament usually makes the decisions, King Charles could declare war if a situation demanded it. Similarly, he holds the right to end the war and declare peace. With his military experience, he could also serve as a commander for troops headed to areas of armed conflict. King Charles can surely do a lot of things that we can't do. He has the power to make decisions for the betterment and well-being of the world. He also has all the tools required to create lasting, positive change that can have a ripple effect on generations to come. Despite the obvious perks that come with his job, it also carries with it a number of heavy responsibilities and duties. Comment down below if there are more things that only King Charles can do. Remember to subscribe and click the bell icon for all future updates. See you next time.